Okay, so with the help of the Master of the World, let's jump into our lima tonight of Sichos HaRan, and we have what may be a shorter shiur because we've been having pretty packed shiur and lately, and I just felt like this teaching itself, maybe we can spend a little bit more time on than we ordinarily would for a shorter teaching. But B'siyata D'Shmaya, let's try to take a look at what we have here. It's a piece from Sichos HaRan and then a bit of a lengthier piece from Chaim HaRan, which actually is broader than the teaching that I'm bringing it in to sort of buttress or support or accompany. And in the context of Be'ezer Hashem, the piece from Chaim HaRan, we're going to learn other ideas also, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece and one of the most glorious sections of Kisvei Breslev, in my humble opinion, is the very, very end of Chaim HaRan. There's a section just on Avodas Hashem, Klalius, just general advice, general teachings, guidance from Rebbe Nachman on Avodas Hashem, some of the most really just core ideas that are brought out in that section. So very, very highly recommended. If you can take a look, if you have a Sefer Chaim HaRan, it's online, it's on Sefaria, so you can check it out over there. But let's jump into Sichos HaRan Mem Gimel. And the tzaddik says like this: we've been talking about for the past week, maybe the past 2 weeks, I can't remember right now, we were talking about the difference between shivron lev, a broken heart, and atzvus and depression. We spoke about how depression comes from the tchol. We said it comes from the spleen, from the place of blood, from the place of ego, from the place of physicality and limitation and the nature of our lives, which drags us down and precludes the possibility of a brighter future. That's atzvus as we saw it. Lev nishbar is not that. Lev nishbar is an honest look at reality and the limitations that we're stuck in and some of the challenges that we're facing. But at the same time, it's constantly within the context of realizing this, that Rebbe Nachman devoted his whole life to trying to remind us, Ein Shem Yish B'Olam Klal, that there's no despair in the world at all. And that was Shivron Lev. It was a heart that was broken, not crushed into pieces, but a heart that was broken open. Letting HaKadosh Baruch Hu in was associated with humility, but also with the realization that things are going to be okay. We're going to get past it. We're going to get through it. With Hashem's help, we can accomplish anything. So we hear very much in that vein, Rabbi Nachman says, through Mara Shchora, which we said is the black bile associated with the spleen. It's the element of dam and blackness and darkness. This state of Mara Shchora, Atzvos, and depression, because of this, says Rabbi Nachman, Einam Yoidim Mishmai, a person no longer remembers his or her name. You have to know what a name is, what this means, that a person forgets their name when a person sinks into the state of depression. So first, Va'amar, Rabbi Nachman said, B'derech tzachos, in a more joking way, more lighthearted way, Shahameis, it's brought in Midrashim, that when a person goes to the next world and a person's not alive anymore, oftentimes they'll ask him, okay, taking registration, as it were, you have to enter, your information. They ask him, what's your name? And the worst thing is if a person that's deceased is not able to remember their name. Rabbi Nachman says the reason for this is ordinarily, the reason that a person would not remember their name in the world to come is because a person that's newly deceased is sad, is ba'atzvus. Umar Shchar is in a state of sadness. Ma'oid. It could be that's why Rebbe Nachman says that he forgets his name, because this is the klal, at least in our world, in our experience of reality. A person who's in atzvus, a person who's depressed, he doesn't know his name. He doesn't know his name. So before going further, let's analyze this a little bit. What does it mean to forget your name? Is that so? That people are depressed, Rahman al-Islam? We know people, right, who are just sad, who are broken, not essentially, but there are phases and stages in people's lives very, very commonly today, of all ages, that people are depressed. And we can sense it, we could feel it. People just, sleep a lot, and they don't have an appetite, and they don't have a passion to do anything really. Is it true that they forget their names? That you try to call them and you try to get their attention, and they don't answer you because they don't realize that you're calling them because they've forgotten their name? we have to understand what a name is. It's actually interesting because it seems a little bit out of order. Really, Sichos HaRan Mem Dalid, as we'll see Be'ez Hashem next week, the 44th lesson in Sichos HaRan is all about the value of names. And obviously, it's appended to the Sicha, right? It's the same theme. We're talking about names. We're talking about, in this Sicha. And so over there, we speak about the import of names. But over there, Rabbi Nachman says that the name of a person encompasses the essence of a person. In another place, Rebbe Nachman says that the name of a person encompasses the person's mission in this world. The reason that we were sent to this world is encapsulated within our name. Rebbe Nachman says there that that's the reason why if a person is very, very, very ill, oftentimes we'll add on a name. We'll add on a name to that person. Why is that? Why are we adding a name onto the person that's very sick, that's very ill? There are a number of reasons that are given in the Sfarim of the Tzaddikim. Rabbi Tzaddik has a reason, the Sfas Emes brings a reason. Rabbi Nachman says the reason is simple. Because the name of a person encompasses and encapsulates, captures that person's mission. So one of the reasons that a person might be called to the next world is because the person has already completed their mission. And so we would like for this person to be able to live out their lives and have more zechus and have more merit and do more mitzvos and so on and so forth. And so we give them another name in order to give them another mission. That's what a name is. A name is a mission. And so if a name is a mission, perhaps this is the understanding of what Rebbe Nachman is saying here. A person who's depressed forgets his name, doesn't forget the name with which he's referred to or how you call to that person, get that person's attention, how we identify that person. But somewhere in that person's inner world, they've lost touch with their identity. They've lost touch with who it is that they are, that they really are. They've lost touch with their mission. And they feel as if their mission is over, that there's no hope, and that there's no use even dreaming of a better tomorrow. A person that's ba'atzvos, a person that's depressed, means it precludes any possibility of there being a brighter future. And that's the element that we're speaking about. Rebbe Nachman says, Einu yodea mishmai. He forgets his name. He forgets his name because the name is the mission of a person. And depression can get in the way of that, where a person is thinking in their mind that, they have so much to accomplish and there's so much to do and there's so much that they can do, especially in the context of our global mission. In relation to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects from us, what he sends us in the world to do, each of us have a mission, a tremendous, tremendous mission, even if it doesn't appear to be that we have any special talents or anything to lighten up the world. Rebbe Nachman himself is going to speak about in the second paragraph, such a simple thing that we can do to change our circumstances, to change the surroundings, those people that we come into contact with. But a depression makes a person forget their name. Makes a person lose touch with that mission, stop believing that we are worth it, stop believing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still holding our hand. And so maybe that's what Rebbe Nachman means over here, that a person who's depressed can't remember his name. So Rebbe Nachman says over here, that the main rule is a person has to be super careful on the third line here, to constantly try to be joyous. We're going to learn about how to do that, to constantly try to be in a state of simcha. And even if a person is as he is, not just that physically things are tough, and that a person's having a difficult time with parnasa, and that a person is having a difficult time raising children or bringing children into the world, or shalom bayis, or whatever it is. Not just that, which would be understandable, that a person has to accept that be'emunah, and a person still has to find a little bit of simcha by saying, Kol ma da'av rachmanas l'tava avid, whatever Hashem does is for the best. That would be understandable. Rebbe Nachman says, no. Even if a person as he is in the state he is behind, which means that a person is far from God, and that's what the person is upset about. Even if that's what a person is upset about, and it's a result of his or her own choices in life, that a person finds themselves in a cycle of negative behavior, a person finds themselves in a lowly circumstance, surrounded by the wrong people, not in the right lane in life, that the person is deeply yearning to walk. Rebbe Nachman says, even so, even if a person is rachik ma'oid me'Hashem Yisbarach, that a person is far away, Rebbe Nachman says, listen to this. You can at least rejoice over one thing that every single Jew has, no matter what happens to you, no matter what will go on in your life and what you'll go through. That I'm a Jew. And that I have access to Torah and mitzvahs. And I know what the MS is. And that I'm striving to be better. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gifted us with a mighty soul, not because we deserve it, and not so that we should become proud over this and kick our legs back. And Chazal say, Kol Echad, every single person, every single Jew needs to say, B'shvili nivra olam, not because it's on us to go ahead and feel as if everything is created for us and everything is coming to us. On the contrary, Rebbe Nachman in Torah Dalet, Rebbe Nachman says that each and every Torah Hey, maybe or Torah Dalet, I think maybe Torah Hey, Rebbe Nachman says every single person needs to realize, we mentioned this in the shiur, that if the world is created for me, it doesn't mean that it's created to benefit me. It means that I have the responsibility to fix the world. I have the responsibility to change the world to the extent that I can, to daven for the world, Rebbe Nachman says. And so there's a tremendous simcha in this, because it means that God believes in me, and that God believes in Nishmas Yisrael, and he's believed in us throughout history. And here we are at the end of time. We haven't forgotten. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu hasn't forgotten us. And that means to say that you and I have to remember our name, our name. Yeah, we each have individual names. Some of our names are written here on Zoom over here. But each of us have our own collective name. This whole group has a name. It's called Knesset Yisrael, Nishmas Yisrael. We have this name. And that this incredible name encapsulates a mission. And that this mission is ever, ever, ever in progress. And to rejoice in this mission, to rejoice in what it says about you and me, what power we have, what capacity we have, even in our worst moment, even if we're not living up to what it is, a yid that HaKadosh Baruch Hu dreamt of, B'shvil Yisrael Shenikaracious, even when we don't feel like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, even when we don't feel as if we're discharging our obligation of coming close to Hashem, of revealing his glory in the world, of becoming nullified to him, and we're not holding where we're supposed to be holding. Even so, Shaloi Aso Goy. That at the most elemental level, I'm a yid. I'm a yid. Even if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and we're striving, and each of us are trying, I am a yid. Nothing can take that away from me. Rebbe Nachman says, Rebbe Nachman says, okay, but that's not enough. You can't just say, okay, I'm a yid, and so nothing matters. No. You have to be real with yourself, and I have to be real with myself. And we have to accurately assess what's our spiritual situation, where are we holding, where's the room to improve. Rebbe Nachman says, take an hour and focus on that. Go out to the forest, go out to the field. Go under your talus, go under your sheets, under your covers at night, and spend time thinking about that, being real with Hashem, being real with ourselves. And that's the time for the Shaber Liboy, to speak to Hashem in our own words, to break our hearts, Lefanav Yisbarach, but always in the context of this ever-proceeding relationship that we have, this unconditional space that we share with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the mission is still in progress, and that we haven't forgotten our name. And we don't need a new name added onto us. This is our mission, and it's still in progress. But to realize that there are course corrections that need to be made along the way. That's life. That's an neshama in a guf. Like we had already learned last week. Rebbe Nachman says, be very careful. During that time, don't fall into atzvos. In analyzing those things in our lives that we need to fix, and those things that we've been struggling with, and those things that are difficult to us, let that not compel us into this state of hopelessness. Maintain the hope. Even the fact that we're taking aside time and we're spending time with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the context of speaking in our own words to Hashem, that itself should give us so much hope, that we're among those that care about Yiddishkeit. That if we feel broken, we should rejoice over the fact that we are still feeling enough that we can feel broken, that these things matter to us and that they break us. The fact that we're broken itself should be a cause for simcha, to realize that 99% of the world doesn't get broken over these things. They might get very upset if somebody dents their car, or if who knows, the stock market is not doing well. Those are the things that break their hearts, right? But that I'm a person that my whole life, Yiddishkeit is not something I do. Yiddishkeit is what I am. And that I care deeply about this more than all the other things, because it relates to my eternity. It relates to my eternal existence. And that's what hurts me, to rejoice with that knowledge, even while we're in pain. Those two things can be true at once. Remember, we learned that the Jewish heart has two chambers. In one chamber, the Zohar Kodesh says, in one chamber is crying and one chamber is rejoicing. And these two things need to go hand in hand. Oftentimes, they feed one into the other. So, Nachman says, it's forbidden that should cause a person to fall into blackness, to depression, to lose our name, to fall under the illusion that the Yetzer Hara tries to push us down into this illusion that we've lost touch with our mission, that our mission is over, and that we've failed, and that it's finished. There's no such thing. Shaloi asani goy. I am existing in this world. I am not a goy. I am a Jew. I have a special mission. HaKadosh Baruch Hu implanted within my soul the capacity and the responsibility to change the world. And all the while that I'm here, broken as I may feel, all the while that I'm here, that means, like Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, Kol zman shaner doleg efshar letaken. Is the candle still burning? If Charlotte came, we can fix. Let's not forget our name. Let's not forget who we are. I feel that so much of today's confusion and the problems with youth and kids that are disenfranchised is because we haven't given over to them enough our name, our collective name. And so Yiddishkeit becomes very much about the person's own individual name, meaning to say my own identity and building up my midos and fixing and making sure that I'm learning properly and making sure that I'm davening properly. But what about our collective name? What about the mission that our own efforts are supposed to serve, the collectivity of what story we're a part of for thousands and thousands of years? It can change things a little bit for kids when they hear that they're part of something so broad and so great that transcends their own individual lives, our name. Nishmas Yisrael, with the mission that Yisrael encapsulates. This week's parsha, Yisrael, Yashar Kel. Yashar Kel, that's a Jew's essence. Yashar Kel, straight to God. There are 1,000 things that get in the way in the middle. But at the essence of who I am, Yashar Kel, always direct to God. It's interesting, the Sichos HaRan, the Rebbe, in his Sefer Sichos HaRan, toward the end, he gives a piece of advice that I use often. For when a person is davening and we feel as if we're bombarded, or Nachman says specifically during davening, we start thinking about things we'll never think about the rest of the day. We start davening, boom. I think that I heard maybe in the name of Shalom Shvajon, he said, Eila v'rechev ve'ela v'asusim anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu naskir, which literally means in going to war, Eila v'rechev ve'ela v'asusim, these take their chariots, these take their horses, anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu naskir. We go out to war, we say God's name. He said like this. He said, in a joking way, but he said, he said, when non-Jews want to travel, they take a rechav, they take a chariot, they take a horse. The Jew wants to travel, the second he says the word of the name of God and davening, boom, he's off. He's traveling all around the world. So it's funny, but it's sad. I also heard from Sichos HaRan, there's a Torah in Likutei Moharan that begins with a question, a mighty question. He says, where does it come? I don't have my sefer in front of me. It's at the other end of the table. I have it on my table. Don't worry. It's on the other end of the table. But he says, where does it come from? Where does it come that the tzaddik is davening and all of a sudden a foreign thought, a distracting thought pops into his head? Where does that come from? So Sichos HaRan, I remember in shiur, he said, for us, the question is the opposite. That we should be in wonder, how does a little tefillah fall in among our machshavas zaras? Because most of our davening is distraction. If there's a little bit of tefillah in there, wow, that's already something special. But it's hard, right? We daven, we get bombarded, we get distracted. And, what percentage of our tefillah, Rebbe Nachman also speaks about this in Sichos HaRan. What does God want from us? Like how much of our tefillah can we really focus? It's very difficult. But the Sichos HaTalmidim gives a very, very great exercise that I use. And he says, if we feel as if we're crowded out by all these negative, distracting thoughts, he says, envision in your mind as if there's a king sitting on a throne and crowds and crowds and crowds and crowds of people are surrounding, and you have something super important and the king, or the king's expecting you, and you, by hook or by crook, you got to make it to the king. And he says, envision in your mind what that would be like to push all the people away and push your way through. And he says that's what you should be thinking in davening. Yeah, there are distracting thoughts, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still there. And we have to find a way to push through the distracting thoughts. So that's a very good image. And sometimes I'll wave my hands even to just to make a path. I'm not trying to, negate the negative thoughts and get them out of my head. They'll still be there, and that's fine. I got to push through. This is Yashar Kel. I'm going straight to God. That's our mission. That's our name. Depression makes that we should forget that. Depression means it's all over, hopeless. To begin to become identified by the body as opposed to allowing the glory of our souls to manifest at the core, at the essence of who we are. And to say, you know what, maybe I am the Nachash after all, right? Maybe I am the Yetzer Hara. And maybe the Yetzer Tov, I've killed it, I've shut it out. Rahman al-Itzlan. That's not Lev Nishbar. That's Atzilus. And we forget our mission, forget our name. And that's the counterproductive sort of klipa, the other negative side of like a parallel to Lev Nishbar in a way of holiness. Rebbe Nachman says, 1 hour, not Atzilus, Lev Nishbar, be real. The rest of the day, Yirak b'simcha, a person should only be in a state of joy. We're going to get back to this in a minute when we look at the piece from Chaim Aran, which is beautiful and glorious. We'll get there. But here there's this small, tiny teaching, which is so beautiful, mamish beautiful. And I looked, I researched. You can't find a similar teaching in any of the Sfarim from the Tzaddikim. I looked. Who talks about chiyuch? Who talks about a smile? Only Rebbe Nachman. Listen to this. Gam al yedei simcha, when you and I manage to bring ourselves to joy a little bit by contextualizing things. I mean, looking at the big picture, not becoming pigeonholed or tunnel visioned into the tiny problem, but to reach a point where I can tap into a level beyond that, something broader, something bigger. Says the tzaddik, Gam al yedei simcha, when a Jew is in such a state, and a person simple is besimcha with this, that I'm a Jew. You can bring another person to life. He says, there are people. We'll never know what another Jew goes through. We'll never know what another human being goes through. You walk down the street, there are people who are suffering, suffering. People are suffering. And they cannot find the words to even express what they're feeling, but their hearts are heavy and their hearts are broken. And they would want to give over what they're feeling to somebody else. They have no one left in their life. They've sabotaged all relationships. They're alone in the world. But there's no one who will understand them, no one who will give them the time of day to listen in a world where everybody's busy, sending out. But how many people are taking in to listen to the cry of a Jew, to listen to the cry and the pain of another person, just to listen. And they have no one to speak to. No good friend that's going to say, hey, let's go out for coffee and, what's on your mind? What's on your heart? It's nobody in their lives. And they walk the streets of the world laden with the burdens of their worries and their anxieties and their stresses and the pain that they're suffering. Says Rebbe Nachman, all of a sudden a person's walking down the street and he's smiling. You can bring this person to life. Just a simple smile. You didn't say anything to the person. You just smile at them. Just a smile. You can bring the person to life. Mamish. And Rebbe Nachman says, Adam in a davarek. And to bring another person to life, of course he's living, understand, but to bring him back to the realm of the living, that there's hope. And yes, life is difficult, but you can find pockets of shining glory, beauty. Those little moments where HaKadosh Baruch Hu smiles at us in our lives. We can find moments like that. Amidst the pain, Rebbe Nachman says to bring a person back to life, it's a very, very wondrous, glorious thing to be able to do that for somebody else. Simple thing. That's why some people feel, who am I? And, what do I know? And what can I teach? And what can I do? And who wants to listen to me? No one has to listen to you. And there are always people who want to listen to each and every one of us. You got to find them. And there are always people who know less than us, even though we think we're so poor in our knowledge. It didn't stop me, right? I know nothing, right? But whatever I feel that I know, you got to give it over. Like the Baba Trevor said, Aleph, teach Aleph. Find someone. There are people who want to listen more than you know. But even if you don't even open your mouth to say anything, but to smile, just to smile. And not only when, you just received a raise or you got good news, even when you don't feel like it, try it, smile. I started many, many years ago. Can't remember exactly, many years ago. I'm not alive many, many years. Many years ago, I started this thing where I look in the mirror and I smile at myself. That's my natural thing. When I look in the mirror, I smile at myself. I can't measure exactly how much of an impact that has had on my emotional well-being, but it certainly didn't hurt. It certainly didn't hurt. I look at the mirror and I smile at myself. Used to be something else. But I look in the mirror and I smile. And just to smile, just to see a person smiling, it just fills your heart with this incredible, incredible hope, this incredible realization that all is not lost and that the world is not as broken as sometimes it may appear. I can tell you just on a personal level, I always say this when I'm teaching this over, and I'm makar tov to that person. I don't think I'll ever find out who that person was. I don't think it's possible to track that down. Too much time has gone by, and even then it was an anonymous encounter. But I went through a very, very difficult time when I was a teenager. I went through a difficult time my whole childhood, my whole life growing up. I went through terrible things in school and socially, and it just wasn't simple. Was not simple for me. And there was one particular time, I think it was in 11th grade or so, where it was like a late Friday night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just in a bad state, and just hanging out and not connecting to Kedusha, certainly not. And I remember walking home, and it was one of those nights. It was like just feeling completely lost and broken and living life under this incredibly thick darkness that couldn't seem to lift. And the setting was right for the moment. It was the middle of the night, but there was a slight drizzle falling. It was in the winter, and I was all bundled up in my sweatshirt, and my hoodie, and coming home, and the streets were empty. It was Shabbos, and for a neighborhood in Far Rockaway, it was quiet. Some of the chaver here, Yaakov, might know Sage Street, Sage Street. And I'm walking down, and all of a sudden, around the corner, turned a yid who I don't think at that point I would have even looked at twice, just because I was so angry at that whole establishment. It was a very yeshivish looking guy, like a big brisker payas and a big hat and a coat. And again, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was like 3:30 in the morning. I don't know where he was going. I don't know where he came from, but he looked at me and smiled. And I can tell you honestly, it changed my life. That smile, mamish, Rebbe Nachman says here, he just smiled at me. That was it. And he passed, and I kept on walking. And the night got a little brighter. I don't know why. I can't explain it. It did something to me. The humanity of a smile. The humanity of two broken human beings who are both going through what they're going through. But the ability to communicate to another person that I get it. We're all a little bit lost. We're all suffering in our own ways. But we can do this. We can do this. Changed my night. And so I can vouch for this teaching. And who knows if anything that I'll ever do, and anything any tefillah that I'll daven, and anything that I'll learn, anything that I'll write or teach, maybe it's all on his account. Rebbe Nachman says, "Lahachiyas adam ina davar reik." It's not an empty thing. You davar gadol ma'oid. What one little smile can do, we can't underestimate that. We should be conscious of this. We live in a world where it's become like it's weird if a stranger smiles at you, and we try to go about our business and sort of just not really look too much, and we're not really interested. What happened to humanity? What happened to this, that we're all on this journey together? And when it comes to the big questions, none of us have it figured out, and all of us could use a little bit of chizuk. And so whether it comes in the form of a smile, or if it's a friend and you put your arm around them and you say, hey, what's on your mind? What's on your heart? You give people the time of day to speak to you. It's a very, very big thing. Nachman says the Gemara in Tainis, Mehani Trei Badchi. There were two Badchanim. It's a famous Gemara that there was a Amoira who was walking with Eliyahu Navi in the Shuk, and he asked him, point out to me who are the Bnei Olam Haba in the Shuk, who are the people that are going Yashar Kel, that are going straight up, to bask in the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he pointed out two individuals who were jesters, who were comedians, who were jokers. And he says, these are Bnei Olam Haba. Look at all the righteous people that are in the Shuk, and this one learns this, and this one does that. These two people, why? Because they bring people joy. because they bring people who are already living, but they're the walking dead. He brings them to life, and he gives them back their mission. And he reminds them that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still with you. Adayin etzlecha, ba'adcha. Hashem is still standing with you, holding your hand, linking arms with the master of the world, and that your mission is still in progress. There are some bumps along the way. That's life. But you can make it, and you will make it. That's Rebbe Nachman's teaching on the smile. Let's look at this piece from Chaim HaRan. Again, this is from the last section of Chaim HaRan. It's overlooked. I don't know if people make it through the whole Chaim HaRan. It's gold. This section is gold. Really, really, if you could only look at one section, maybe in all of Kisvei Breslov, outside of Likutei Moharan, which is its own thing, but in all the hashkafic writings of Rebbe Nachman, this last section of Chaim HaRan, it's so kedai. I don't know exactly what numbers it goes to, but if you open it up, you'll see it's on Avodas Hashem. Just Avodas Hashem. Halach anava babayis. Rebbe Nosson says that Rebbe Nachman one time was walking back and forth. He would constantly walk very quickly throughout his house, thinking thoughts and shaited. It's floating around, flying around the world in his mind and his machshavas. The whole Torah, Nigla, Nister, Rebbe Nachman, we have no asaga. So he was walking once back and forth, babayis, that he had this very unique, special house in Breslov. Rebbe Nosson says, Rebbe Nachman was talking to me about Darchei Avodas Hashem, about how to serve God. You can imagine, the sun and the moon, the Talmud and the Rebbe just walking throughout the house and upstairs and downstairs and into this room and out of that room. And Rebbe Nachman is just revealing to Rebbe Nosson the path of serving God. People go through terrible things. People go through hardships and challenges and disappointments and obstacles. And sometimes they make it a little bit easier, and there are times where we're able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that's clearer, in a way that's more smooth. You get a break, right? Sometimes you get a couple of weeks and it's just really going well, and it's just, really, really able to connect in davening, and your starim are good, and you get up in the morning for shachris properly, and so on and so forth. Each person's own avodah lashon hara, you're working on it. A couple of weeks, Shema Gan Eden, Mamish Gan Eden. Which was a life-changing concept for me, by the way, when I started learning Breslov. And I saw this terminology also in Memches and Tinyana, the 48th lesson in Likutei Moharan, Tinyana in the second volume. Rebbe Nachman has this lashon, Kishenichnas la'avodas Hashem, when a person enters into the service of God. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, we're all in avodas Hashem all the time, right? We're born Jews. At least most of us are observant our whole lives, and those that became observant later on were able to carry the yoke and the incredible gift of Torah and mitzvahs. We're serving God, right? That's what it is to be a Jew. Rebbe Nachman introduced to me this new idea of you can be serving God, but you haven't yet entered into avodas Hashem. You can be doing all the right things, but you haven't yet taken a step into the framework of right actions to come to identify with what this thing is, that it's the entirety of my life, that my life is devoted to avodas Hashem, not to putting on tefillin or to wearing tzitzis or to davening or to learning or to doing chesed, but it's a different way of living. And it's possible for a person, even who's been serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu his whole life, to one day wake up, right? Even though he was awake, but he was sleeping a little bit, and say, okay, I'm ready to really serve God. Not just avodas Hashem. To really, really, really build a relationship with Hashem. So Rebbe Nachman says sometimes a person has a little bit of a break. Anava Amar. Rebbe Nachman says, Ein Rishoyim levater laHashem yisbarach. A person is not allowed, Rishoyim, not permitted, levater laHashem yisbarach, to be mevater and to sort of give in to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amar b'lashon Ashkenaz b'zeh lashon in Yiddish, he said, Metur des Eibishtin nicht nachgeben. You're not allowed to give in to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning, in the beginning, he had it tough and it was difficult. When a person has a little bit of a break and things are going well and it's smooth, So a person can say to himself, Yoimar, a person can say, good, this is what I'm davening for. Hashem, beautiful. Thank you for granting me this ability to serve you. And the Yitzhar is weaker and it's not taking over my life. And finally, I feel like a mensch and I can serve you properly and things are going well and I can perceive you in my life and I don't get angry as much and so on and so forth. And a person can say, thank you, Rebbe Shalom. This is what I asked for and this is what I got. Says Rebbe Nachman, no. Don't let a Kodesh Baruch Hu get away with only part of the salvation, which is what we so often do. Don't suffice with whatever your hasaga was that you said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I would be happy with A, B, C, D. But what about E and F? And what about G? And what about all the madrigas that are beyond your current conception of what spirituality can look like? Don't let a Kadosh Baruch Hu get away with just giving you what your little mind is able to conceive that you need. Ask for more. Ask for bigger. Dream big, Rebbe Nachman says. Dream big. Well, the harbors begot guim avtsaris with your yearning. Keep on the yearning. Say, this is nice. I appreciate it. It's wonderful. I'm grateful. Thank you, Hashem. But I need so much more, so much deeper than this. You can get more. You can be better. You can be greater. And afterwards, Amar Rebbe Nachman says, Avo lachem ein tzrichem loymar zos. He says, I don't even need to tell you this. Because I already told you, but you always have to be besimcha. Koloimar. This is the flip side of that. And we're gonna explain because it does seem like a steer. We're gonna get to the bottom of this, at the bottom of the piece. Rebbe Nachman said to his followers, to Reb Nassim, that if you're going to walk in this path and you're constantly going to be dreaming, even when you're doing well, you're going to start to say, okay, I'm doing well, but there's so much more I can do and I haven't even begun. And you're going to focus only on that. So that could bring you to pain and to say, when will I ever make it? Right? And there's always going to be those that are more advanced. There's always going to be deeper levels. And a person can fall into this experience of atzvos, of sadness and brokenness, but in a negative way, to just give up. Because we'll say to our, which is forget our name. Just say, forget this mission because I can't do it. Because I'll never get there. You see, even whatever accomplishments I make, but look, there's so much more for me to do. It's just too much for me. Asher zois hamida shal atzos, Rebbe Nachman says again, this meat of depression, maszekes lana lavadasi, is baruch yoser me'akol. There's nothing more damaging in our avodas Hashem than slinking into this darkness. It's nothing worse. Therefore, Rebbe Nachman again stresses that every person needs to encourage his or herself. Find a way, pretend, act crazy, make jokes, eat a slice of pizza. Whatever it takes. Listen to music, dance around your kitchen like a fool. Even when we are distant, and even when we're struggling, to be aware of the struggle. That's the shos. There was nothing, and people say, the rest of us are delusional, right? Because they're just, the simchat tamid is if nothing matters. In that hour, there's nothing more real than a breslov. There's nothing more real than a breast of our heart that's broken open, that's standing in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu like a mirror and saying, I see what I need to fix. And I'm not happy, because I don't care about this. I'm happy despite this, but I find a way to be besimcha because I know that's the only hope that I have of fixing these things that I speak about in his fodados is by being besimcha. That's the only way that's a tool. It's not an escape mechanism to say, I don't need to deal with my problems. It's a tool to deal with our problems. There was nobody who was more aware of what they needed to fix than breast lovers and hispodidos. There's no deeper hisbonenus. There was no deeper honesty, to be honest with the Kadosh Baruch Hu in a way that maybe we couldn't even be honest with ourselves if we weren't talking it out to our Kadosh Baruch Hu like he's our best friend in the world. And the simcha of the rest of the day is not because I'm escaping. It's not because I'm delusional. It's because Rebbe Nachman tells us that after we've already identified the problem, good, but what do we need to dwell on it the whole entire day? The rest of the day needs to be to fix the problem. There's something deep here. If his spononos is going to bring a person into depression, then he really doesn't need to be besimcha the rest of the day. Because anyway, the mission is over. It's hopeless. There's no function of being joyous because there's no hope of fixing. But in as much as his spononos is not atzvos, it's not depression, but it's shivron lev, which is filled with hope. which is filled with the realization that our mission is very, very much still in progress. Memela, the rest of the day we need to be besimcha, because that means to say that there's hope, and therefore simcha is the way that we can get back on the horse and that we can continue the mission. You hear what's going on here? These two things are hand in hand. If a person does his spodidus properly in a way of shivron leiv, memela he walks out, and he's not besimcha because he thinks that he's perfect, but he's besimcha because his spodidus taught him. And this experience in the context of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's unconditional love has taught him, I'm still on my mission, and how am I going to carry out this mission or fix or rectify the things that I just talked about? Only with simcha, only with simcha. Okay, now even when we're distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're in pain and the neshama is suffering. Still find a way, find some kind of premise for joy, some kind of permission to be a little bit besimcha even within the tsar. Find a little bit, a little tiny, little holy point of goodness that you still contain within you from your youth, from the time of innocence, when you had the princess that we speak about. Again, the fact that I'm a Jew, just the most elemental, basic foundation of what it is to be me. No matter what I do, to transform it all, to realize Hashem has a plan. He has a plan for me, Begashmias. He also has a plan for me, Baruchnias. I have Bechira. It's true, and we need to work on our Bechira. But at the end of the day, here is where I am in person. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running my life. And from this moment on, I got to make sure that I'm making the right choices. But if I find myself here, what should I do? Say that, this fell out of God's master plan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with me. Even if I am as I am, but even me, and again, the realization of how distant we may be and what kind of difficult darkness we may be enduring itself brings me into this incredible joy. Because a person should say, listen, yes, it's true. I haven't managed, to live up to my ideals, and I haven't managed to live the life that I dream of living. But afal pikein, even a person like me, but I'm still zocha to be a part of the Jewish nation. There are so many mitzvahs that we do even without thinking about it. Such a limud schus. Even Jews that don't know that they're Jewish, their lives are filled with mitzvahs. They're still giving tzedakah, probably, right? There are so many different things that even in a secular lifestyle, the lifestyle of a regular human being, they're not killing, hopefully they're not stealing, and so on and so forth. They're not ripping flesh off a living being and popping it at their mouths. There are things that they're doing just by virtue of being humans. And so there's so many mitzvahs, certainly, that a religious Jew, that a Torah observant Jew, that a Jew, that a Yid is accomplishing even in our worst moments. I'm still putting on tefillin every morning. I may try to get them on, as quick as possible, get them off as quick as possible because I'm just not interested in this. But I'll call panim, I'm the mitzvah tefillin. Even a person like me, even this flesh, even this body, I'm the mitzvah of tefillin. And sitzis ukriyashma tzedakah v'chiyotze v'afal pisha asiyas mitzvahs in kamoishem. Like I said, even though the mitzvahs, okay, how they look, the mitzvahs that we perform in such a state, how lowly they are or appear. There are wonderful, small, beautiful drops of goodness that are embedded in those tiny mitzvahs that we think are so small. We're bringing about, even on our worst day, we're bringing about incredible, incredible rejoicing and delight and pleasure in the worlds above. Even those that qualify as Jewish sinners, that their lives are devoted to sin and that they're acting in a way of rebellion, any mitzvah they do brings about rejoicing in the world above. As long as a person is still a part of our nation, and they're still called by the word Jew, means to say they still have their name, their collective name, which encapsulates this mission and this desire, like we say in Kiddush, v'ratza banu, this desire that Hashem has for us. Kolzman, that they're still called Yisrael, they haven't forgotten their name, and that we haven't forgotten what their mission is, even if they don't know that they're still called Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mispar boy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has incredible hisparis, incredible pleasure and pride in this person. Because the pasuk says, Yisrael asher becha espair, period. The Jewish nation in whom I, Hashem speaking, takes delight. And so if you're still part of that, and you're still included within that mission of this idea of a nation called Yisrael, Hashem has pride in you. Hashem has pride. On your worst day, Hashem has pride in you. And so start from there. Should we suffice with this? Certainly not. Rebbe Nachman was before talking about even a person that's attained such high levels, he has to go beyond. We shouldn't suffice with that. But in those moments of darkness, and there will be moments of darkness, welcome to the world, welcome to life. Hopefully we have those that are smiling at us along the way to give us a little bit of hope. And isn't I think Eli Wiesel once referred to Rebbe Nachman. He said Rebbe Nachman of Breslov is a smile in Jewish history. He's a smile. That's what Rebbe Nachman is. Such a beautiful way of putting it. All of Rebbe Nachman, hundreds and hundreds of pages and stories and songs and and poems, and what Rebbe Nachman is, he is that smile. That the Jewish nation is baderech, and they're on this long journey toward the end of time, and it's that 3:00 in the morning, Friday night, and things aren't going so well, and it's drizzling and it's pitch black. Rebbe Nachman of Breslov smiled at the Jewish nation, and he brought us to life. Rebbe Nachman brought us to life, right? And so even if we don't have that, but there's going to be challenges along the way. And in that darkness, Rebbe Nachman says, find those speckles of light. Find that consciousness and that perspective that will enable you to still tap into a little bit of joy, the realization that my mission is still in progress, not to forget your name. He says Rebbe Nachman has built mountains upon mountains of halachas, meaning halichas, guidance in life, based on all these concepts and predicated on what we call the first principle number one. At our core, we are holy, based in chapter 1 of the story of our lives, to redefine who we are, that we are a soul and we are holy at the core. Start from there, everything changes everything, because there's no room for any kind of delusion that Hashem has given up on us, or that we've lost our mission, even in our worst moments. Not to forget our name. We've talked about it. Rebbe Nassim says at the end of Chaim HaRan, throughout Chaim HaRan, throughout Likutim HaRan, throughout Sichos HaRan, which we're learning now, so many different pieces of advice as to how a person can bring themselves into the state of simcha. Fortunate is the person that doesn't just learn about them, but that puts them into practice. And sometimes we can sort of not take ourselves so seriously and laugh at ourselves a little bit and act a little bit silly and make some silly faces, at a kid or maybe even at another adult. Just anything that will remind us that things aren't so stern. Make a couple of jokes and jokes also give us that perspective, not taking ourselves so seriously, also give us that perspective that, okay, there's hope. Sometimes they say in a difficult situation, one day we're going to laugh about this, right? So I saw somebody said, so why shouldn't we already start laughing now? If anyway we're going to laugh about this in a year from now, I could already start laughing. Sometimes a situation is so bad, I'm sure you've experienced this, that there's nothing else to do but laugh. It's like one of those days where just everything's going haywire and one thing after the other, and all the kids are just going crazy and all the toys are all over the floor, and then you open up the the drawer and the whole thing of flour falls on your head. Just every single thing. What else can you do except just look up and say, but I get it. You're here and you have a sense of humor, and yeah, I could cry, but sometimes you could also laugh, right? To find a way to make a little bit of a joke out of things. It's a big klal, I think, that marriages that are really, really successful ordinarily means they have the gift of humor. They have the ability to, at least one of the two, has the ability to inject a little bit of humor sometimes. Find the comedy within difficult or intense or stressful situations. Humor, comedy, the ability to laugh, even in the darkness. Sometimes that itself. Like he says, sometimes most times he says, got to hold on to this secret, make a couple of jokes, find the humor in situations. We have to be wary of this. have to be very, very, very wary of this because it sets in. And if it hasn't set in yet in your life, ashreich and ashreich v'toiv. And I don't want to say anything bad, chas v'shalom. Every person should just have endless joy forever and ever and ever. But there come moments in life. Some people call it, midlife crisis. Today, frequently people have midlife crises, middle of their 20s, There comes a time in life where it's not so simple. And the dreams don't exactly work out the way that you thought that they would. And we're faced with disappointments. And the trajectory of our life goes in a very, very different direction. And in that moment, all of a sudden, people remember, all that Breslov Torah that my roommate was saying years ago, and I'm like enough of all this. Don't be depressed. I'm not depressed. All of a sudden, it's then that little pamphlet that somebody handed you in a pizza shop 30 years ago. All of a sudden, you start opening it up, and you realize, okay, we get it. We get why we needed a smile in our lives. We get why we needed Rabbi Nachman of Breslov to illuminate the darkness of our modern day experiences. And so a person needs to be vigilant. To find a way to be happy, find a way to fake it, find a way, even if it's not, you can't genuinely be happy about a situation. There are all these different pieces of advice, perspectives, find a way, and even when it's difficult for a person, and it's difficult, not just spiritually, but it's difficult physically, and not just physically, but it's difficult spiritually. Whether we're finding it difficult to sustain our souls, difficult to sustain our physical bodies, to rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sof kol sof, meaning to say in the end, because this is not the end. That's atzvus. We haven't forgotten our names. We're still called Jews. We still have our mission independently. Rebbe Nachman is beaming at us. He's smiling at us. Sof kol sof. After this point that I think is the end, but it's not the end. In the end, lo yazav Hashem netzach. In the end, things will be good. And if it's not good, it's not the end. Because you know what's at the end? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ani Rishon, I was there at the beginning. And when we enter into the world with how much joy, with how much rejoicing that it brings our parents, with how much rejoicing we, as our Hashem, bless us, always should be blessed to bring children into the world, with how much joy, Ani Rishon, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I promise you, the same Hashem that's present by Ani Rishon, Ani Achron. That's what's at the end also. That's what's at the end. And if you think that you've hit a brick wall and it's not joyous, then it's not the end. It's not a brick wall. Because the end is filled with joy. Ani Achron. Ani Achron. Sof kol sof. In the end, lo yazav Hashem netzach chalila. God will not forsake you forever. The F shall find a way to become joyous. Mikol shekain. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even in the darkness, Hashem will smile a little bit. Hashem will smile a little bit at you. And all of a sudden, a little bit out of nowhere, you get, it's just one of those dark days. And all of a sudden, somebody reaches out to you from 10 years ago. And, who knows, something happens in your day that's totally out of left field, something you didn't prepare for, something. And it's taka hard day and it's difficult for you. But you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a wink. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is winking at me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is smiling at me a little bit. So certainly, he says, when a person experiences that, when a person gets a break, a little break, so a person has to be so joyous, to be grateful for it, to live in a more simple-minded way, not to need so much, not what they call, I think, high maintenance, not to need so much. My maintenance is low. I just need, the basics. If I can have more, and I'm grateful for it. But the simple things in life, that should bring us joy. Just the simple things, a deep breath can bring us joy. Walking through the park and really be misponen at a flower. Like we say, color is a bonus. God didn't need to create the world with color. He could have created the world black and white. You know how I know this? Because if you ever saw a black and white film, you could still understand what's going on. There are many, many hues of gray. Color is a bonus. Total bonus to appreciate color. And to rejoice in a little flower, to analyze it, the shape, and wow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we say, I like what you did with the place, Really, I find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in there. That could bring a person simcha also. And over here he says, V'havin dvarim elu. He says all of this what can appear to some fluffy hippie talk, Says Rebbe Nachman, who was a genius, a genius. Rebbe Nachman was a goin oilam, nigla nister. Rebbe Nachman, with a very, very serious expression, you have to read these words. V'havin dvarim elu. Says Rebbe Nachman, Chevra, get this. Understand what Rebbe Nachman is telling you. Ki divrei Rabbeinu zalhim amukim ma'oid. Because they're very, very deep. It seems simple, and it seems, okay, I get it. Yeah, okay, it's a mitzvah gedol b'lias b'simcha tamid. No, it's not. It's very, very, very deep. To understand what simcha is, to understand what a shame is, what a name is, what a mission is, what shivron lev is, what atzvus is. This is all of life. And one little chut hasaira, one little hair's breadth off, and it can lead to disastrous results in those moments when we need these lessons. Amukim ma'oy. And here Rebbe Nachman says the most beautiful, wonderful thing. The ikar ha'amkos, you know what the essence of the amkos, or the essence of this is? The essence of this brokenness is? I'm sorry, not this broken, of this depth is? Hulahavin hadvarim lakaima b'pshitas gomer, is to actually do them. That's the depth. Some people they'll spend 30 years in Rebbe Nachman's Torah, delving deep, but they don't realize that the deepest dive you can take is simply to put it into practice. That's the depth. That's when you can perceive the extent of the depth in terms of how these teachings can change our lives if we'll apply them. The afalpi, and here he says, and with this we'll finish. The afalpi shachar kachu yinir kilo sois rabbeinu zal ba'atzmai hadvarim sha'amar lefanai. Even though it appears that Rebbe Nachman says later about simcha seems to contradict what he originally said about pushing forward, not letting HaKadosh Baruch Hu suffice with what he's giving you, but ask for more, demand more, dream more, have a greater vision beyond what you've gotten in the present moment. Even though that seems to be a little bit of a stira, contradiction, Rebbe Nachman adds. That a person shouldn't give in, and a person shouldn't settle, and a person shouldn't become satisfied. Because we have to be so besimcha. How can we do both? Says Rebbe Nachman, don't worry. And we need both of these teachings. Rebbe Nachman always gives the balance, the tension. We need both. We can have both. That's the essence of Rebbe Nachman's Torah, is the realization that there are two ways of looking at everything. At least two ways of looking at everything. Zeh b'china zeh, right? This is an aspect of that. Everything has 5 aspects. Everything has different facets. That's the essence of Rebbe Nachman's Torah. So Rebbe Nachman says it's okay. You can do both. And you'll need both. Rebbe Nachman says, I understood a little bit of his kavanah that a person shouldn't fall into depression by constantly focusing only and solely on what is yet to attain. Like we said, a person needs to find joy and a person needs to be joyous. Like we said, even if a person is struggling and it's so difficult and a person doesn't have parnasa and there are obstacles and things are not going well in our lives. Like we learned. Person has to find a way to bring himself or herself to joy. With all of this, that it's true that when things are going not so good, you're able to say, Rabbana Shalom, I'm able to find you in this, and thank you for the difficulty, and thank you for this. I understand that you have your master plan, and guess what? How good would things be if I could perceive the goodness? Gewalt, how much deeper the goodness is when I can't see that it's good. That means that it's a mind-blowing level of good that's beyond my mind's ability to grasp, because everything you do is good. So when you hold up those things that are apparently good to those things that are not apparently good, it means that it's so good that it's beyond my ability to even understand it. It's so deep. So thank you, Hashem, for that. And to be with simcha with that. But still, aval afal pikein, Rebbe Nachman gives us the other tension, pulls us back toward the other side. Even so, al yala al daita shekfar higila mashet sarich. Never allow this feeling that at least I'm a yid, and at least I put on tefillin today, let that not compel us into a negative kind of thought cycle, which will cause us to suffice with whatever level of Yiddishkeit we're at, and this is one of the main critiques on Breslov, is that if we constantly tell people you're holy and you're good and you're perfect, and just be besimcha wherever you're holding, whatever you have, that's going to prevent people from growing because they'll just suffice with that. But I ask you, has that been our lived experience? Have any of us learning these teachings simply put our feet up? Do you see me sitting in bed the whole day and just saying, I'm good, I'm a Jew? Adarabba, right? It's the tools, like we learned, it's the simchas, the tools to help us rectify what we're so honest and exposed about of what we need to fix. And so in that aspect, Rabbi Nassim says, don't settle with that. That needs to bring us back to life, remind us of the foundation. The mission is still in progress. Keep on marching. Don't forget your name. You're a Yid, our name, and the name is a mission, and the mission is still in progress, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu is with you and smiling at you all the time. But still, a person shouldn't sink into this experience of thinking, good, I'll suffice with this. My avodas Hashem is perfect. That just because I'm grateful for what I have, that means that I don't need other things. Two things can be true at once. I'm grateful for what I have. Every breath I take is the Gavalt. But I also need Parnasa. And that's fine. Those two things can be true, and both of them can be true. They need not negate one another. And in Breslov, even though it sounds strange to people who don't really know what Breslov is, only peripherally from what they see or hear about in the news, Breslov is balanced. There's nothing more balanced than Breslov when done right. Nothing more balanced. It's the extreme of both. We spoke about last time, Torah and Tefillah, both, right? In the Tasher shiur, right, on Thursday, Torah and Tefillah, the halacha and agada, and so on and so forth. The balance, Breslov is the balance because it's the intensity of both. It's like I once described it, we're not in the middle just because we happen to be there. We're in the middle because we're being pulled with equal force to two extremes. And you know what the difference is? When you're being pulled with equal force to two extremes, and that's why you're in the middle, it's moving, it's vibrating, it's pulsating. There's life there. It's not just you happen to be, okay, you happen to hang out and you learn a little bit of Kabbalah and you learn a little bit of Gemara, and you just, you sort of have the balance. When the balance is a product of knowing that I need the extent of one pole and I need the extent of the other pole, and that's why I'm in the middle, because I'm being pulled equally, pulsating. That's where Rebbe Nachman wanted our Yiddishkeit to be pulsating, to be alive, to be awake, to be alive. Hashem has much more to give you. Don't suffice. Don't give in. Be bold. Be bold. Hashem wants you to be bold. He gives you things in life that you need to daven about because he wants you to daven. Like Rav Hutner famously said, right? Tefillah is not to get us out of trouble. Trouble is to get us into tefillah. And so all the while that we have troubles in our lives, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to daven about it. And not to say, I'm okay with what I have. No. I am okay with what I have. But also, I know that you can do much more. But don't let that kind of perspective detract from the simcha. And so we need both, and it's a balance. A person who walks in a way of simplicity can actually begin to apply these perspectives. It's not just a shiur that you hear and it's nice and you forget about it. These are teachings for life, mamish for life, to be applied immediately, to transform the way in which we look at things, to transform the way in which we experience and react to circumstances and situations. So we are already over time. Thank you so much for joining, all of you from all around the world, mamish, for joining in this lima together. And I hope that it's as meaningful to you as it is to me, because I really genuinely appreciate the time that all of you take. It's an undeserved privilege that I have to be able to explore these teachings with you. And like I always say, there's special siyata d'shmaya when a group gets together to be able to understand things that I couldn't have understood, learning it together on my own. So ashreinu chaver, what a privilege to learn these teachings. Don't just learn them, share them, like we say, share them, smile at people, bring people to life, smile at yourself in the mirror, adopt that minhag, you'll see things change a little bit. What a privilege, what a schus that we have a Rebbe who smiles at us. What a privilege. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed. And Be'ez Hashem, Thursday night, we'll continue with our Parsha shiur, the Siyata D'Shmaya. All the best, Chavra. Ashreinu. Chazak v'ematz. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.